morning, everyone. We've got some stragglers this morning, it appears. Some people who have either slept in or I think this is what they did, is they got up and they saw the sun shining in through their bedroom window and they said, man, oh man, I'm going to go have my coffee out on the back deck. So as soon as they realize that it's still -1 degrees outside, it'll take them a few moments to get with it and get on with us. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us again this morning. Of course, I'm Greg DeRocher. Got my colleague in crime, Ian McLean, with me from the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. And Ian, why don't you introduce our great guests this morning?
Well, I was going to start by saying wasn't sure it was you. I thought you were Santa Claus, Greg's half brother on vacation.
Adams, yeah.
Given the winter look here, we're joined today by a couple of friends and from BDO. Charmaine and Tim are with BDO Canada. Obviously, BDO is a big partner of ours. Both our chambers also is one of our partners on business to business on our radio show. Comes on frequently. So we asked Tim, always grudgingly says I can get people smarter than me to join me, so he brought along Charmaine today. But BDO, obviously great partner in the community for so many things, but obviously at this time, Greg, trying to understand in this moment of uncertainty with tariffs, which is why we're doing this show every week, is we don't know what the answers are, where the end state is on tariffs, but what we do know is we got to be prepared and start to prepare our businesses, particularly the small, medium-sized business sector, and that's where BDO shines. So I want to, maybe do we start, Tim? Why don't you, because you're Charmaine is in one of your, I think in the Toronto office, Markham office, but why don't you introduce Charmaine and the specific role she plays with BDO, and of course you're the office manager here in the Kitchener-Waterloo or Regional Waterloo office for BDO.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ian, and pleasure to be here. Obviously, at BDO, our client base is really focused on the private enterprise, non-public company space, which is obviously where a great deal of your membership is in both Cambridge and KW chambers. So with our clients, a lot of them are either bringing in raw materials or goods from the United States, or in turn exporting products to the United States. So there's been as with everybody, a lot of uncertainty among our clients with regards to the current situation with the Americans. Charmaine Goddeeris she is a director of our customs and excise tax unit, and I must admit I worked with Charmaine on a couple of clients, but she was in a fairly unique niche within the firm. And then all of a sudden, when Donald Trump was inaugurated, she became the latest rock star within our firm, because everybody wants to talk to Charmaine about what's happening with regards to tariffs. So Charmaine was down to speak to a group of our clients back in February when this was just really starting to percolate, and now has worked directly with me on one client engagement, and we're working on a couple of others to get off the ground. Again, specific clients that are doing a lot of cross-border work, and so I'll throw it to Charmaine to talk a little bit about what her work involves and the types of things she's doing to kind of help our clients address a very difficult situation, because it changes rapidly. I'll give you an example. We were on the phone with one of our clients talking about tariffs. Literally in the middle of that meeting, the policy changed. right?
Mhm.
And Trump put a pause on the very tariffs we were talking about right in the middle of the meeting. So I had CTV up on one screen, I had the meeting up on the other, and we were going in with. So that's just how fluid this whole situation is. So I'll pass it to Charmaine. Maybe Charmaine, you have a few kind of opening comments in terms of what we're talking to clients about in terms of preparing or trying to address all this uncertainty.
No, that's great. Thanks very much, Tim. Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak today on my favorite topic. And as Tim said, my rise in popularity, I think it might lead to me being on the next Blue Origin astronaut flight to space. That's the trajectory I'm on right now. All kidding aside. So again, my name is Charmaine Goddeeris. I lead the Customs and International Trade practice here at BDO Canada. I'm actually part of a larger global group of consultants. So there's about 75 of us around the world in every major trading country. And our role is to help importers and exporters manage all of the compliance requirements, pre-Trump and now post-Trump, as well as mitigating any import-export duty costs as much as possible. So yes, Tim, as you indicated, very busy right now. My cell phone is my newest appendage because even this morning, President Trump is on Truth Social cranking out a few things. Apparently, there's been some uplift and good conversations that have happened with Japan and Mexico over the past couple days, and he's meeting with the Italian prime minister or president. I'm not sure how they refer to her, but just to talk about ongoing negotiations. So if everyone would bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'll do the trade state of the union, so we all have the most current information as of 9:13 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 15, 16,
17.
17. I don't know where Q1 went. Oh my goodness. So where are we? So we have the very first set or executive order that President Trump released. It was part of his whole America First agenda. And as part of that agenda was this concept. There's a couple of concepts that are going on. Number one, he took issue, or the Trump administration took issue with border security and the movement of fentanyl across both the northern and southern border. So that was and other security issues around the border. Also, in terms of this idea of leveling the playing field with tariffs around the world. The Trump administration came into this current presidency with the feeling that there was a trade imbalance with the United States, and you've probably heard it many times in the news that the U.S. has been treated unfairly, especially by what he says are his north and southern partners. So presidency happens, inauguration happens, first executive order is the America First. And in there, we saw the first set of tariffs against Canada and Mexico, and they were under the IEEPA program, and that's an emergency act down in the United States. And high level, what the IEEPA tariff said that any products of Canada or Mexico going into the United States would attract this 25% punitive tariff. Now, key there, product of Mexico and Canada at that point in time, there was very limited remissions or relief available. And we saw a little bit of movement on both sides of the border. And we've arrived at this concept of, yes, the February 4th IEEPA orders are in place, but now it's 25% tariff on goods that come from Canada or Mexico that don't qualify for CUSMA or USMCA. And of course, CUSMA, Canada, US, Mexico agreement, US, United States, Mexico agreement, they put themselves first, we put ourselves first, but those two agreements are the replacement for NAFTA. So for that first set of Feb 4th IEPA, 25% if they come from Canada and Mexico, 0% if they come from those two countries and they qualify under a free trade agreement or under the free trade agreement. Then we have the second set of tariffs that apply actually against all countries in the world in the steel and aluminum space. Now, if you recall, we saw this steel and aluminum trade war kick up between Canada and the United States back in 2018, 2019. It was one of the biggest sticks that the Trump presidency used to get favorable, or what was perceived at that point in time, favorable results as they were renegotiating NAFTA. And this is important because we're seeing something very similar to what we saw in 2018, 2019, but on a much grander scale, because we are in fact coming into the review renegotiation of that free trade agreement in 2026. And we already know that there's major things in there that the Trump administration doesn't like, specifically Canada's, dairy quota regime and poultry, lumber, pharmaceuticals. There's a bunch of things in there that the Trump presidency does not like and will focus on when we go into the CUSMA USMCA negotiations. And guess what? Once again, he's got this set of punitive tariffs right behind him, which he's using as his negotiation, or we think he will use as his negotiation tool. And if anyone on the call has read Trump's Art of the Deal, you will see that he's also almost going, step by step in his negotiation tactics that we see in that book. And his negotiation tactics are keep them in a state of uncertainty, keep them in what almost feels like a paralysis, because they're more likely to negotiate favorably. So we had the US come out with their first set of IEPA tariffs and their Section 232 tariffs, which are steel and aluminum. Canada said, whoa, no, we're going to retaliate, and we're going to retaliate in a tit for tat form. So what that looked like is Canada went, okay, this amount of revenue when we export into the United States is going to attract this additional punitive tariffs. So on the Canadian side, we're going to put in retaliatory tariffs dollar for dollar. And how they did that is through a very strategic set of tariff classifications or products. So a tariff classification is a 10-digit code that identifies to the various government agencies what a product is. So they've picked this set of goods, said these are the tariff classifications. If you import them, if they are a product of the United States coming into Canada, they will attract an additional 25%. Now, Canada did this a little differently because they're not allowing any type of concessions if the goods qualify for CUSMA USMCA. So set of goods, 25%, that's the way it is. Their response to the steel and aluminum tariffs, similar to the first set of retaliatory tariffs. So there's a list of steel and aluminum and a little bit of other things thrown in there, some sports equipment, etc., and said these particular products, if you import them from the United States into Canada, will attract 25%. He loves those nice even numbers, 25, 50, 75, 100, 200% if you're Russia. So we've got, these two sets of tariffs. We've got Canada's retaliation. And then on April 2nd, of course, Liberation Day, the press conference from the Rose Garden, where the Trump administration revealed what we call reciprocity tariffs. So this was a 10% tariff on most trading countries around the world, with an idea that that would escalate dependent on the trade imbalance with a particular country on April 9th. What we saw between April 2nd and April 9th is these other countries go, whoa, 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 we want to negotiate. So the Trump administration put a 90-day pause on that escalation. So while this is all going on, there is an escalation in the trade war between the United States and China. Sure, you've all seen it in the news. We're up to about 145 to 245% tariffs on Chinese goods entering the United States. Now, interesting thing there is those Chinese goods don't have to come directly from China into the United States. What we see in Canada and where some of our, Canadian importers and exporters and clients are being impacted is they purchase goods from China, they bring them to Canada, they repackage them, and then they ship them into the United States. Well, just because it came from Canada and you did a little bit of packaging, it's still a Chinese good, and it's still going to attract that, 145 up to the 245 is in a very specific area, but so I'm just going to say 145. So just, so much going on right now. And we also understand that the Trump administration over the next few weeks is going to take a big look at lumber and pharmaceuticals as well. So this certainly, we have not seen the end of it right now. So that's the state of the tariff union. I'll pause there in case anyone has any questions, because otherwise I'll just keep talking for an hour.
As we go through this, if anyone has any questions specifically, just raise your hand and we'll certainly bring you into the conversation.
One of the things, Charmaine, that I know we've heard from others that have been on the show or in our conversations, Greg and I, is the auto tariffs, as an example, are on imposed. I don't know what it was 3 weeks ago. But they don't actually come into place until at least May 2nd, because the tariff classification codes that you just talked about, they actually don't know which parts actually are to be covered, because which ones quote qualify as parts from the US, which means over 66% or something. Like, but less of the specifics, this doesn't feel like it's a well thought out policy, because they're still waiting to do in the auto space the classification of what gets covered, what's not. And then 30 days later, the Treasury Secretary still has to make a determination of whether they're tariffing the whole car after they've tariffed the parts.
Yeah.
Like the uncertainty there, how do you kind of address that for, and some may not have that much exposure, but that is a tremendous amount of uncertainty. What are the things that people are doing now to kind of set themselves up for what is likely to be a longer term? At least there's going to be no certainty. There may be more certainty than there is now, but that's a different thing than having the rules of the road completely kind of set in stone. Does that make sense? I mean, I think
no, it's good. And I have a few things to say there. So number one, automotive is my jam. I've been doing this. We're going to go with 25 plus years, Ian. We won't add on what the plus is. So, I've ridden an automotive roller coaster, because it really is. Even taking the tariffs out, we see this, roller coaster sort of every 8 years. Automotive goes up, does really well, something happens, so these poor guys and gals, they ride this roller coaster all the time, and now we've put this extra layer on top of them. So automotive is still very much in a place of uncertainty, as you suggested. And even, was it 2 days ago, the Canadian government came out with this concept of, we're going to offer remission to our Canadian automotive, vehicle makers if they manufacture in Canada and they import goods. So let's take Ford as an example. So Ford manufactures in Canada, but what we do know is the F-150s all come out of the United States, right? So, and that's one of their main vehicle lines. So if you're going to put 25% on, the vehicles, the F-150s coming up, I mean, our whole industry, automotive, comes to a standstill. But now the Canadian government has come out and go, yeah, we're going to put a pause on that. If you're a manufacturer in Canada and you import, here's this great, customs notice. Well, then you go to the customs notice and it makes reference to this specific list of business numbers of importers that you should refer to, but they don't give you that information. So I will say on both sides of the border, it is incredibly frustrating. It's frustrating for me who's, in it and working in it every day. I can't even imagine what it's like, for a business owner, because it's minute to minute, changes. And there's this concept of initially, we're only going to charge 25% on 85% of the vehicle. We're going to give you relief on 15%. So what I say and how I usually start these calls is, let's take a deep breath, everyone, because there's a lot out there that we can't control. Okay. We can't control what Donald Trump, and I wish I could say this to the Canadian government as well. Let's focus here and not so much what's going on. We can't control him. We can control what happens in Canada, and we as business owners can control things like your supply chain, things like ensuring your tariff classifications are correct. Definitely in this point in time, shoring up your CUSMA and USMCA qualification, because that really is the main area of relief right now, certainly for, imports into Canada imports into the United States. Canada has made a few concessions for USMCA qualification, but not a lot. The US has definitely made more, and which is interesting because, I think it shows that slowly they are understanding, especially in the automotive, how interconnected our supply chains are. And it's not easy to just pivot, to Europe to get that part, and or pivot to another country, and there's also follow up to that. Anytime any small shift you make in your supply chain could potentially impact your ability to qualify for a free trade agreement, right? So it really comes down to knowing your supply chain, knowing what the impact of even the smallest changes could be, because let's all be honest, we've basically operated in a zero or very low duty or tariff impact over the past 20 years, right? We really have. So things cross the border. If there's not a huge cost, it doesn't get highlighted. No one pays attention. We're a little lackadaisy. All of a sudden, when you're looking at 25%, it's really important. And you don't want Joe Blow in your purchasing department just going out anywhere and purchasing a component because it's cheaper, because the impact down the line could be disastrous to your company.
Good point. Yeah. Lauren brings up an interesting point, and I think it's kind of that. It's kind of this understanding of where people started in this process, where Trump started in this process, and understanding where he's going in the process.
Yes.
Both of which nobody can figure out, and I'm not even sure Donald Trump can figure out where he started with this, other than for 40 some odd years he's been saying that tariffs are the way to go. But the point is that Lauren's trying to make here is Donald Trump was the one who came out and said, "I don't know what idiot would sign this agreement," when in fact he was the idiot that signed the agreement.
Yes.
But I think Lauren's question really is, did something happen throughout the Biden term that were changes made there that all of a sudden tweaked him to say, "Oh, this is my opportunity to say, some idiot signed this," or is it still the same agreement that he signed?
It is absolutely the same agreement that he signed and negotiated and was very proud. I think back to that one picture when you've got the leader of the three countries and he's kind of beaming, holding up this, great agreement, because he detested NAFTA and all of the things that, in NAFTA. And now here we are X amount of years later, and it's, the worst trade agreement ever. And our US is getting the short end of the stick. So nothing changed. What did change is in the steel and aluminum space. Remember I said, first of all, Canada got the exemption and Mexico because, we successfully renegotiated CUSMA and USMCA. There was a little, asterisk there that said, we assume that Canada will get their transshipment of foreign steel under control. And when I say transshipment, I mean steel that's coming in from aluminum, having minor processing done in Canada, and then flowing into the United States. So there was, some backdoor deals of, yep, Canada will get that under control. We did in Canada put in some processes to try to stop that from happening. Unfortunately, now that the Trump administration is back, he didn't see any type of movement or favorable movement that he wanted to see. So that's why, they're back. What I think we're seeing is, in his first administration, he was still learning the ropes, maybe didn't have the, what he considered to be the right people behind him. This time he does. And we're seeing definite movement because he's got a stronger team, what he perceives to be a stronger team behind him this go around.
Wow.
Yeah, people that won't say no or
No.
tell them the truth. That's what it seems. So Tim, one of the things, and you often come on the radio show. I mean, we always kind of say like, and particularly for small and medium sized business, having folks like Charmaine and yourself is really important because one of the reasons we're doing this is, as I said, is to try and be prepared when it's impossible to be prepared. So from your perspective, you've got, clients right across the board. How are you advising them to kind of think about being ready so they can react to when there is more definition or there's more of a certainty around where tariffs are going? Because I don't think we're at that point yet. How do you kind of advise them to kind of be ready as so that they can be nimble?
I think the biggest thing we're talking to them about right now is understanding their supply chain, like understanding it in depth in terms of where are they sourcing, where are they exporting to, and understanding what types of goods those are. And I'll probably will throw it a little bit back to Charmaine because one of the things we're dealing with a client right now is Charmaine's basically taking their supply chain, all of their codes, essentially import codes. I don't pretend to understand all of it, sort of thing, but taking all of those, running them through essentially a software and kind of almost like an AI type software to kind of understand where the weak links, where the pressures are on their supply chain. So if Trump slaps on a tariff today, you can kind of model out what's going to happen to your supply chain, and from there, do you need to make any changes? So that's one. The second one is with regards to their overall U.S. operations, and do they need a presence down in the U.S., whether that's setting up some sort of U.S. subsidiary and changing around how they manage and source, which, frankly, it's probably playing a little bit into the president's hands. That's what he wants. He wants folks setting up shop in the U.S. and employing people down there and the like. But there are ways to look at those the U.S. presence, and then how you transact between Canada, your Canadian presence, and the U.S. presence via transfer pricing, et cetera. So I'd say those are the two things. But maybe Charmaine, can you talk a little bit about the pressure test aspect that I know you've talked to our clients about with regards to supply chains?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start and say there's three key pieces of information that determines what your duty or tariff cost is going to be when a good moves across the border. So the first one is the tariff classification, which I spoke to. That's the codes. And any country that belongs to the World Trade Organization abides by this concept or this framework of harmonized tariff classifications. The second is origin, where it came from, where it was manufactured. And the third piece is the value. So when you combine what a good is and where it came from, you get your duty or your tariff rate, and then you calculate that against the value that's declared. So because there's three key pieces of information that's used to determine what a duty or tax outlay is, those are the three key pieces of information that we need to look at or that we can work with in order to change what the duty outlay is going to be. So yes, thank you. We've created software here, and it's called TOVA. Tariff Origin Valuation Analytics. We take an importer, and we can do it in Canada, US, over in Europe. We take their import data directly from the government. We load it into the software, and then bam, you've got this, visual representation on your screen. The very first page, the cover page, is a global map, and it has, colored each of the countries that you import, from. So that tells us where your suppliers are. So we can start to, dig in country by country, see who your suppliers are there, what you're importing from them, what value spend is. And from there, we can start to do that what if planning. What if Trump puts an additional 50% on this product? What does that look like? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, my duty cost is going to increase by, X amount of dollars. Do we need to look at resourcing or looking at another country? So what I want to say too is, even if we get to a place of certainty with Donald Trump and what the tariffs are going to be, whether that is, this concept of 10% for every country around the world, we will get to a place of certainty. Not overnight, but we will get there. But the next Donald Trump's coming up, down the road, the next blockage in the Suez Canal, the next COVID pandemic. You have to be able to pivot your supply chain. First, you need to know it. Then you need to be able to create. And I'm saying to clients, don't just create contingency plan A. You need B and C, because you need to be able to pivot. And now we know that because we see changes, as Tim said, middle of a presentation and new information is coming out, and that it has real impacts to Canadian importers and exporters, and they need to be able to pivot as well. Also, in Canada, we have forced labor and child labor laws as well that requires reporting to the Canadian government about where your suppliers are. Another reason that you need to know who your supply chain is and where they are, because the penalties for, if you have to do an S211 report, are like $250,000. So, this is important, not only to, disaster proof your company, but also to be able to report on the various requirements that Canadian importers have.
And if I can jump in, the one thing, this all seems like, well, of course I know where my products come from, or my inputs, but talking to clients, this is actually when we start asking them the questions, is like they start looking at each other and say, well, no, we get it from here.
Yeah.
No, I thought we got it. We got the product from here. Yeah. Charmaine nailed it, that this era of free trade, we haven't had to pay attention. And when we ask them about codes on the thing, it's like, well, we throw it to this code, but because it didn't matter. It was all 0% tariffs. So no one really paid a lot of attention to it. And now it really matters, because there's specific things, especially on Canada's retaliatory tariffs, that really do end up mattering. So a lot of our clients don't understand their supply chain.
And it's some of that because it's been free trade, that your importer of record, where you're doing that at the border, has that information. You may not, and you got to have your own information. And you say, it almost goes a layer deeper of where are their supply chains too, your suppliers' supply chains. I guess the comment that you made, Charmaine, and this is I guess the uncomfortable truth, is Donald Trump is, I don't know what we have left, 3 years, 10 months, and 3 days or something, but it's a long
65 minutes.
It's 65 minutes, but it's a long. And there's no guarantee that when we get past this, that whoever the next administration is, JD Vance or some Democrat, they're not going to go back to being Ronald Reagan free traders. Like there's going to be some version of America first. Take your pick of what that looks like. So while this is really, I mean, it's idiotic, it's going to hurt people around the world. Doing the heavy lifting now for the businesses watching or for our members over this period of time will pay off, because this is not going away entirely, as far as I can tell, again. So I mean, if that's is that one of the reasons to kind of know your supply chain, to Tim's point in both years, find out who they are, a couple of redundancies, and be paying attention to that, because it's not just the Donald Trump era, it's going to be beyond that.
No, you've nailed it. And I say, and that's why I was looking over here. I have three quotes that sit in front of my computer all the time. And my favorite one is staying still is rarely the right choice. And I have to admit, and Tim can probably speak to this as well. In the very beginning, a lot of the clients, Canadian companies that we were speaking to were stuck in this state of paralysis. Right? They really hadn't seen this before. If they were outside the steel and aluminum area that we saw back in 2018, 2019, they haven't had to experience anything like this. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how long it was going to last. And we feel that a lot of questions of I'm just going to wait this out. It probably is only going to last, a couple months. My bottom line can withstand that, and it'll all be fine. It'll all work out. And again, this is where I start the conversations of, yeah, but this is just Trump now. What happens? Suez Canal, COVID. The international trade world has forever changed, and you have to change with it. And I wanted to make another comment here before I hand it back over to everyone is a lot of what we hear too is, well, my customs broker is taking care of it. And don't get me wrong, Ian, love customs brokers. Before I came to BDO, did a stint at a mid-size customs brokerage in their compliance group. Great. And they're really good at their job. But you know what their job is? Their job is to take the information that the importer of record or the supplier gives them on an invoice, create the import submission, and send it off to customs. That's their role. They are a third-party service provider that relies on the information that's provided to them. If that information is incorrect, it's not them on the hook. It's not them paying the additional 25%. It's you. You're the importer. And again, we saw a bit of lackadaisiness around because there was no tariffs, or there was tariffs, but very limited for the most part, especially in North America. Things were happening. The customs broker invoice came across the accounts payable. They signed off on it. It was for a service fee, and away it went. And the only time someone put up their hand and said, "Oh, there might be an issue," is when Canada Border Services Agency came knocking with a verification, right? So that doesn't exist anymore. Even in terms of CUSMA USMCA and the importance of it right now, well, if there's this remission or relief based on, this requirement, guess what? The government agencies are going to start reviewing and auditing this requirement. So I'll say to everybody on the phone, and we've heard this, I've heard it both from the Trump administration and from the Canadian government, expect those CUSMA USMCA verifications to go up. So if you're using that to get your goods in duty free or avoiding this 25%, you better have your documentation in place. You better know how to do the qualification. It's not enough to say, well, I made it in Canada. Okay, well, that's awesome. But there's a very specific set of rules that you have to meet to say that your good is CUSMA compliant. Okay, so we've done that. You've done your analysis. You need all of this support because one day someone is going to come knocking and want to take a look at it. And that could be 2 years down the road. So do you want to have, 2 years down the road, customs go back and say you owe us 25% on everything you imported into the country? I mean, that could be devastating.
Yeah.
Mm.
This has really prompted, and I think the Prime Minister had a phone conversation with Donald Trump, and basically out of that, both of them came out and said that this is once the election is over, they want to start the process of sitting down and reviewing or revisiting the CUSMA agreement, the USMCA agreement, and it may lead to, obviously a new format of whatever that agreement looks like at the end of it. But it'll be different, obviously. But it may actually include tariffs. But at least at that point, we hope for the next 3 years, Donald Trump will remember that he actually signed the agreement, whatever we agree to, and things, and then
Exactly.
there'll be a little bit of certainty in it. But I think some of the uncertainty that businesses are looking at with respects to, looking elsewhere to do trade, is, we have a wonderful agreement with CETA, with the CETA agreement with the European Union. And one of the questions was, is there any modifications in that would, as a result of this whole process? And I think part of the problem that a lot of companies have with considering that is the supply chain isn't built, and so it's kind of difficult to enter into a trading relationship with another country where that supply chain is not in place. A member of ours is in the computer business and import. They actually refurbish off-lease Dell computers for Dell, and they're one of the largest companies that does that for Dell. And we were talking the other day, and I was asking him about repatriating the computer manufacturing. He says the problem is it's not only it's ridiculous to assume that you're going to get Americans to work for $500 a month, because that's what they get paid in China. And he says it's also ridiculous to assume, because most of those factories have 20 to 40,000 employees that work under one roof. There's no place you could put it in the U.S. where there's 20 to 40,000 people unemployed looking for a job at $500 a month. But he said the biggest problem is the supply chain isn't here for computer components, that all the itty bitty little diodes that go into computers. The supply chain's just not on this side of the Pacific. So you can't move that readily. And the same thing would kind of be for some companies looking to deal in Europe or in Asia, for that matter. The supply chain network's just not there, and that's one of the critical components of trade.
Exactly. And I actually have a couple of comments there, and because I've learned a lot as I talk to different companies over the past few months, and in the window space and glass, etc. Apparently, we cannot compete with European window manufacturers or glass manufacturers, because we just don't have the same level of material available to us that they have. So exactly, there is pivoting your supply chain to the EU is not as easy, and they have different requirements in in the health space as well, and CSA. So it's not. This needs to be a longer term plan with agreements of all countries on the types of work or industries that they want to have in those countries.
Yeah. Are there any questions? Any other questions? I hope we haven't worried you. This is
We're just
supposed to.
continuing to worry everybody. Maybe the less specific than and back to I because I think it bears reinforcing. There isn't going to be a certainty like an endpoint part, and I think that's why it's really important to really understand your own circumstance in terms of supply chains, when you can pivot, when you can't. I mean, that's really got to be the watchword moving forward, is because there won't be any clarity. I mean, in 30 days or at the end of May, maybe there's some clarity around autos in that space, as an example.
Yeah.
But Trump could wake up 2 weeks later and say the negotiations aren't going well for the Kuzma renegotiations, and I'm slapping them back on, or pick
Right.
something else that might be devastating to our economy. So. Whether you're caught up now, and I think maybe that's the other part, Greg, maybe you're not caught up right now, but it doesn't mean you might not be in a week or 10 days or 2 or 3 months down the road. So understanding your that side of your business is going to be pretty important for the next 3+ years.
Mhm.
Agree.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that's the best strategy right now, is exactly what Charmaine said. Like, we got to stop fretting about Trump, because Trump will be Trump. We just have to get our own house in order. And looking at other markets, just like the other markets, both internally, where they're trying to take down interprovincial trade barriers, and externally, whether that be Europe, whether that be China, but other markets, because it's clearly a different relationship with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had talking to an economist and talking about dropping the interprovincial trade barriers, and its impact on our GDP will replace some of the loss that we've had. Well, he's not quite as optimistic about that. He's suggesting that yes, it will, but not to the percentage points that they're talking about. However, what there is an opportunity for, and I think, it's part of what you folks are saying to your clients, if the interprovincial trade barriers are dropped right down to nothing, so you can trade freely right across the country, there is a chance to build that and to say, hey, well, why don't we look at ways where, are there suppliers or are there customers in other provinces that maybe there weren't because of the barriers that were up? So I think there is an opportunity to maybe, bolster some of that national stuff with the reduction of international or the interprovincial trade barriers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, couple of hands up there.
Lauren,
Lauren
hop
first.
in.
Hi there, Charmaine and Tim. Just to your point on your proprietary software about the tariffs, putting inputs to say, okay, here's my codes. This is what I'm, this is what the kind of output would look like with the tariff impact. And I assume that you're looking at, like, you're able to kind of show, is it maybe, prices and whatnot. But I'm wondering, are you guys able to model with, similar to this other gentleman's questions about Europe? So say, yes, it might be a lower tariff, doing trade in Europe or South Asia, but is the cost of a US tariff worth the cost of doing business over there? Just so people can kind of understand, maybe a little bit quicker through this AI modeling, what's kind of the best route.
Yeah, so we can help with that, because as you indicated, there's many other things outside of duty and tariff costs when you're looking to move your supply chain or your selling chain into another country, and the answer is yes, we can help with that, and again, and model that out. And we do that with help of, consultants, et cetera, in the various country. So it's not just me, talking with you here about it. We get someone from that area, an expertise in that area on the call, so that you get a complete idea. Because again, there's VAT, there's all sorts of other taxes dependent on the country. So yes, that type of modeling can be done.
That's highly valuable. Thank you, Charmaine.
Thank you.
Anchor?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just a little bit of my thought process because I own a consulting firm as well for mitigating tariffs, cost reduction, nearshoring, and that's what I have been doing it in the last 30 years. I've been trying to convince people that finding the right supplier, the right place is the key right now. But somehow I've been talking to very at the C-suite. But one thing that I have seen that the mindset that yes, we have a problem, but somehow people are thinking that it will go away. So we talked about electronic supplies. We talked about a lot of things that even if before even going to China, there's a Mexico as a partner, which is a Silicon Valley and electronic hub. But people are not even willing to entertain. And I'm not saying I'm not just stereotyping everyone or just saying everyone, but most of the people I have talked to at the very high level, they think, yeah, it will go away. And I'm also seeing the same problem. People have no idea where their supplies are coming from. There are so much emotional attachments are there and so much internal barriers within those companies that they don't want to show to the top leadership or board of directors that they were doing something wrong. I don't know, like, is this something everyone is facing? Especially Charmaine, you've been talking to so many people. I have faced this thing literally, despite of it's like I use the example that when a cat is coming to eat a pigeon closes its eye thinking that cat won't eat that pigeon. So unfortunately, I'm facing, and you guys are, subject matter expert in that. Just want to know your thought about it.
Yeah, no, it's great. And yes, I am experiencing those same things. I spoke a little bit about it earlier of this concept of, this paralysis, and we don't quite know what to do. And again, this is going to go away. It always goes away, but it's not going to go away. Will it look exactly like this? No, but this is not going away. This ups and down, topsy-turvy, and it's not just in the tariff space. As I said, it's in, the Suez Canal being blocked. It's the COVID pandemic. There is just all of these pressures on businesses right now that they need to get their plans in place.
But there is a reluctance, especially in a time of uncertainty, because to do this kind of
Yep.
planning, well, you have to invest some dollars. And businesses right now in a time of uncertainty, what they want to do is hold on to the dollars and wait and see. We hear a lot of wait and see. There was a lot of initial panic. I would say, February 1st, a lot of initial panic.
Yep.
And then everybody wanted to do something, but they didn't know what to do. Then when Trump put things on pause, everybody, oh, okay, well, we'll wait and see now. We'll wait and see. And well, he'll put it on and then he'll take it off again and things like that. But I don't think that's the end game here, and so there is going to be some level of permanent tariffs, at least through the Trump administration. What that'll look like, we don't know, but we're encouraging our clients to get ready for that, and we'll see. But right now, it's wait and see, and for a lot of them. So.
Yeah.
One thing on that, Tim, because you said it requires an investment, a monetary investment to do this planning. Now is a good time for companies to look at, is there any money on the table that we've just kind of left on the table that we could get back? And I'm talking about, GST recovery reviews. Look and see if there's any opportunity. If you paid GST and haven't claimed it back, that might be a small way to get some money back in your pocket. Property tax, same thing, have someone look and see if you paid too much property tax and there's, an opportunity to get some of that back. Duties, if you paid duties in the past, now is a really good time to take a look at all of that and see if there's anything that you can get back. Shred credits, carbon capture credits,
Clean
really
tech.
take a
Clean
clean
tech.
tech. Yep, let's start to take a look at what potentially is on the table that can help you, so that maybe the modeling won't be so much of a financial impact. So, again, lots of things to explore there and think about it. And I know we're running out of time, but my takeaway point or what I want to say to everyone is my quote: staying still is rarely the right choice. And that applies in this situation. You can't stay still anymore because the world is changing around you, and you need to plan for that.
Listen,
Well, that's been fantastic, Charmaine and Tim. We certainly appreciate. We hope we can call you back on this session. We're doing this as long as the tariff uncertainty is going, and we want to keep as many people updated as possible. There are folks who joined us live this morning, but this is also a recorded session that'll be on our chamber. chambercheck.ca page going forward, so many others will listen to it eventually. But want to thank you for your time and this morning, and your talents for such uncertain times and scary times for some.
thanks so much, guys. Everyone have a good day.
Thank
you.
you.
We'll be back next week, and hopefully it's Flavio Volpe is going to give us an update on the auto sector, as well as his role on the Prime Minister's roundtable as well on Canada-U.S. relations.